The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everybody, welcome to Ion Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz here, and boy am I surrounded by people tonight. We got Thomas Jefferson making his first appearance here. We've got Sheriff Mike Brooks. He's a longtime guest of ours. Dan is a guest tonight instead of being a co-host, a part-time co-host. You're a guest tonight, and for the first time ever, and we hope it will not be the last time, County Board Supervisor Bill Wingren. Welcome.
Thank you.
We appreciate your being here.
Senator
Welcome, all
Alan
of you.
Simpson once said after an introduction, of all the introductions I've ever received, yours is the most recent.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad I'm touched by that.
Yes.
Well, anyway, they're all here tonight, including Thomas Jefferson, because we're going to be talking, at least in this segment, about the Declaration of Independence. It's going to be read this year by Sheriff Brooks on the steps of the courthouse. We're going to talk about how that came to be, why the sheriff, how he feels about that, and so forth. And then later on, Sheriff Brooks and one of his Sheriff's Department captains will be here. We'll be talking about some Sheriff's Department issues and so forth. So anyway, that being said, let's get started. Now, this is being read, as I said, on the steps of the courthouse on July 4th. And it's been done on the steps of the courthouse in the past, but I don't know that it's been, you know, a formal resolution that was brought before the county board in the past. And this year was, and this was just recently passed by the county board. Does someone want to read this? Bill, this was you brought this forward kind of at Dan's request,
Dan's
I guess.
request, right.
Okay. Would one of you like to read the resolution as it was passed?
Sure.
Notice how Dan slides the paper over to Bill.
Thanks, Dan. You're welcome. This is a lot of legalese, but it says what's going on here. Whereas the Continental Congress, by Declaration of Independence dated July 4th, 1776, clearly declared the inhabitants of New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia were no longer colonial subjects to be exploited arbitrarily by servants of the King and Parliament of Great Britain, but now were free citizens of their own territories, and that free citizens should constitute the government for those territories. And whereas the Continental Congress provided that same day, by orders of their House, that their declaration should be proclaimed aloud and published to the free citizens of the territories, and whereas the notification of the declaration to responsible citizen was then done by sheriffs, who proclaimed it on the courthouse steps, by clergymen who read it from their pulpits, and by printers who printed it in their gazettes. And then we go on to the resolve part. Be it resolved that Winnebago County Board of Supervisors requests Sheriff Michael Brooks to read the Declaration of Independence from the steps of the courthouse at 8 a.m. on the morning of July 4th, 2010, as it was the custom in the early history of our country. And Sheriff Brooks, we ask him that he will read the document without further comment or speech. That's basically.
All right, excellent. And you brought this before the county board at Dan's request. Who actually drafted the resolution?
We both worked on it, but the final draft was Bill's.
Okay.
They all of the resolutions have to come through the office of John Bodner, but it was pretty much done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, very nicely done. So, kudos to everybody involved in this. Now, has it been done by resolution before, Bill?
I don't think it's ever been done in the courthouse steps.
No.
It was done
In front of the public library 2 or 3 years ago. That's the
Okay.
only other time that it was done.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
When Mayor
And that
Frank
was
Tower
Frank
read it.
Tower who did
Yes,
that, right?
Yeah, and he did it because I asked him as well.
Yeah.
But there was no
No
city
resolution or
No,
anything?
no.
Did there need to be a resolution, or was that just kind of a nice formality? That
I think it was a formality,
Yeah.
but it made it all official.
Sure, yeah, good. And we kind of heard in here why the sheriff, but well, maybe you want to elaborate a little bit more on the
Sure.
history there.
I
Dan.
did this when I was a legislator in 1975, a year before the bicentennial in North Dakota. And I had a constituent, I'm Bill's constituent too, so it kind of goes around, who said that in the early history of this country, maybe the first 50, 60 years, it was customary for the sheriff to read the Declaration. The county had more power, I think, then. There weren't cities. The county was really the source of all. And so it was just customary for the sheriff to come and read the Declaration. So that's where it comes from.
Okay, all right. And I'm not going to ask Thomas to make any contribution here because he looks like he's just ingrained in thought. So we'll just leave him be. So this is kind of a nice honor for you then to be restoring some of history, I guess, a little bit, huh?
It's very interesting because, as you know, this is my last year as sheriff, and I can't think of a better 4th of July activity than be given the opportunity to read this. As Bill has mentioned on many occasions about this, there's a lot of different things that went on long before this occurred. But one of the things I guess I would just like to jump in and talk about and why it's such a great honor to me, out of the 56 delegates that signed on to this Declaration of Independence, many of them were very wealthy, well-educated individuals, and by doing so ended up losing that wealth. Ended up losing family members who were murdered by the British, had their homesteads taken by the British. Many of them, by standing up for our rights and this Declaration of Independence from Britain, ended up losing everything they had. So to be able to read their words and what they felt was such an important thing, I find to be a great honor, to be frank with you.
Excellent. Well, and I think we should be, equally honored that you're doing it. Not just that you're doing it, but that it is coming in kind of a significant time period in your career too. One of the last official acts, I guess, that you'll be doing in a ceremonial type sense. I mean, obviously you'll be continuing to be our sheriff for a time yet, but one of the last ceremonial
Cheryl, could I
things.
just make one comment?
Absolutely, yeah, go ahead.
I think it's a significant time in the history of this country as well. We have citizens all over this country who are calling for a return to the faith of the Founding Fathers, to go back to the Constitution. This is a pre-runner to the Constitution, but it's our first legal document as a country. And so what better year in one state, in one county, to have the sheriff read what was our first document, the Declaration of Independence.
Well, and you've asked me, Dan, to put the resolution on the website, and so I'm going to be doing that when we get just a little bit closer to then. But I'm also going to put the declaration on there as well. We did that last year, I think.
We did that last time, yes.
And so I can just go back and copy and paste.
good.
It'll work out well.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, and we actually have the declaration here. So maybe we want to take a look at that. And obviously, that's not the original document, but it's on nice parchment paper, and it certainly looks like the original one. Bill, what would you like to say about that? Is this yours?
Yes.
This is your copy?
There's a word that Sheriff Brooks has ringing in my head now, and that one word is honor. The Declaration of Independence, near the end, the signers said, "We pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor." And that word honor has become kind of diminished, I think, over the years. And Thomas Jefferson was a great man of honor. I mean, the author of the Declaration of Independence in his 30s. He was a great writer. He was honored by President Kennedy. There was an occasion during President Kennedy's administration where he invited a large number of Nobel Prize winners to the White House for a reception or dinner, whatever. And during the toast party of the dinner, President Kennedy said, "This is the greatest collection of bright people ever to assemble in one place in the White House, with the possible exception of when Thomas Jefferson dined alone. So that's an amazing tribute to this man. And in his own, it was big back in that day. When you died, you would have chosen an epitaph for your tombstone. Well, he has 3 things written on the tombstone. One of them is not President of the United States, but one is author of the Declaration of Independence. So he was very big in realizing how important that is. And we cannot understand the other great documents in American history without understanding the Declaration of Independence. The Constitution is based on the Declaration of Independence. All the kids in school heard or learned the Gettysburg Address when Lincoln starts out and says, 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Well, what was he referring to? The Declaration of Independence. 77 years ago, the Declaration of Independence was signed. All men are created equal. That was in the first part of the Declaration of Independence.
Well, let's take a look at it right now. I don't know how closely we can zoom in on that, but it is over there, and maybe we can get in a little bit closer anyway on it.
Maybe I can read just the second paragraph of the Declaration is
Sure,
probably
yes,
the most
by all
famous,
means.
and it just says, I drew a blank here. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed with their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That really is the strongest paragraph, and I think it's the second paragraph, of the Declaration.
Okay. I don't know if we can get any closer
Yeah, it's-
zoomed in on that. It looks like that's probably, I mean, I was hoping we could maybe
If you
zoom
look
in on
at
that paragraph.
if you have that on the screen,
We do.
the largest signature is John Hancock, and he's not
There
famous
it is.
because of the insurance company. But he was the first signer of the Declaration of Independence, and some would argue, I would, he was the first president of the United States, because he was the president of the Continental Congress. Therefore, the Continental Congress, adopting this declaration, said, now we're not the colonies of England anymore, we're the United States. Therefore, he was the first president. George Washington, of course, was the first president under the Constitution. So, and then adding to what Sheriff Brooks said, if you look at the other names on that document, 2 became president, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. 9 died during that time. 5 were captured, and there's a guy named Thomas Nelson who lent $2 million to the cause, never got a cent back from the government, even though he was promised. Can you imagine government not keeping his word? I'm shocked. But anyway, during the war, General Cornwallis, the leader of the British Army, occupied his house. And as a strategy, he ordered the colonial army to fire and destroy his house. He lost everything. He died a pauper, and it says he was buried in an unmarked grave. I find that hard to believe, but it gives you the idea that when these people pledge their lives and their honor, they meant it.
Right, right. Now, again, this is on the 4th of July, which is a Sunday this year, and it is going to be at 8 o'clock a.m. on the steps of the courthouse. Now, is that going to be where the parking lot is?
No,
In the front?
Jackson Murdoch.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Good for people to know. Hopefully people can make it down there. You know,
Well, we're
it's-
hoping this program will get more people to come.
And I hope I misunderstood. Did you say Jackson Murdoch or Jackson Algoma?
Jackson will go. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Oh, there we go.
And I don't know.
No. I'm
Dan's
sorry.
thinking of a roundabout.
Yeah.
Well,
We can
well,
go
not
down
only-
there
No,
afterwards.
thank you for correcting that.
Well, I think we all have Murdoch out of mind.
Well, that was a good catch, though,
Yeah,
Sheriff.
very
That was
good,
good.
very good.
That one even went past me.
Yeah,
I was just thinking Jackson. But,
Yeah.
okay, so Jackson, Algoma, right, kind of kitty corner sort of from
And I don't want to
there.
give too much away, but there might be a special guest.
Dan has already alluded to
We're
that
hearing-
with me.
We're hearing.
Through the grapevine that it might be, we're not sure yet, it could be Benjamin Franklin or Paul Revere.
And what will he or he be doing?
I think he or he will say, hear ye, all assembled, we have a message for you, or something
Yeah.
like
He will
that.
introduce my.
Yeah.
But you're not saying who.
We
Well,
can't.
we can't.
It's like
No,
a
it's-
state
it's-
secret
yeah,
right now.
it-
Okay, a state
If
secret.
I
It's classified, yes.
if I told you, I'd have to shoot you. So I'll tell Dan.
Then I wouldn't be there. I wouldn't be able to attend on the
No,
4th. We don't want
that'd
that.
be bad.
And if there is anybody out there that would have a garb that I could wear that would resemble what was worn during that time frame, I would be more than happy if you can find one to fit my size to wear it. Otherwise, I'll be wearing my regular uniform. But I think it's very nice that the county is trying to present this in a way that really pays tribute not only to the Declaration of Independence, but what it stood for and the people that fought hard for it.
Yeah. You know, Bill, as you were talking, some of those little tidbits, those little pieces of trivia that a lot of us don't know. Last year, Dan, you shared a lot of different things about the Declaration of Independence that I don't think people really knew either. A lot of the trivia, a lot of the nuts and bolts. Anything that you kind of want to add to maybe piggyback off what Bill was saying?
Very trivial. Only one delegate or one signature put his town on there. You'd think they would have put Jefferson of Virginia, Franklin of Pennsylvania. Charles Carroll of Carrollton is the only one that wrote his where he was from.
Maybe he just wanted to write his last name a couple of times.
I don't know. But you know,
Isn't that
they
interesting,
were
though?
representative of different colonies.
Huh.
You think they might at the end write where they were from, but he was the only one that did.
Have any of you ever watched West Wing? I was a big fan of the West Wing series. The president, Hosea Bartlett, that name was taken from a signer of the Declaration of Independence, Hosea Bartlett from New Hampshire.
Is that right?
Well, of course that's right. Why would I?
See, now you know what I put up with at Judiciary
Yes.
Committee meetings.
All right, now I got to
One thing
rethink if I'm
one
going
thing
to
I
invite
wanna
you back again.
emphasize, if I may,
Go ahead.
and that is that the Declaration of Independence, in a way, is a list of grievances, and many of those grievances were answered in the Bill of Rights. For instance, during the occupation of Boston by the British, they were able to storm in someone's house and sleep there. Well, the Bill of Rights says no quartering of soldiers. And also, the essence of this is the Declaration of Independence is the birth certificate of the United States. And I think that really summarizes it. For it's on that day that we celebrate the birth of our great nation.
Well, and I think far too many people really, forget that. They get caught up in the parades and the fireworks, and of course all of that is that's been born as a result of, our nation's birthright and so forth, but they don't take time to really stop and think about why we're having the parades, why we're having the fireworks, why we have the day off from work in so many cases and that kind of thing.
And we don't call it Independence Day anymore. It's just July 4th.
Yeah.
Really, got to think about that. It's really Independence Day. July 4th is the day, but it doesn't symbolize what the day is.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not going to say is that right, because
Yeah.
you may
And,
have
well,
some smart aleck comment.
No, no, no. Well, Bill might, but I'm not going to.
The Declaration of Independence itself does not say Declaration of Independence. As I'm sure you remember when it was on the screen, you can see that.
Well, I don't think we got in quite that closely.
Well,
but
this is one of those little
yeah.
trivia things
Yeah,
you mentioned
yeah.
before.
Well,
Sort of like
so it
Paul-
doesn't say that at all. It just
No, it was like Paul Revere, for instance, when he was in Boston, warning the people, he did not say, the British are coming, because the people there were British. And to punish the people in Boston, there was a special regiment of very tall, big, husky people sent to Boston, and they were called the regulars. So what Paul Revere yelled at the beginning and through his ride was, the British are coming. He said, the regulars are coming.
I thought
How
he
did
might
it
have said
ever-
the Yankees or the Lakers.
No, but this is another trivia. At the end of his ride, do you know what he said? Famous words?
No.
Whoa. See, that's why I love teaching history. The look on the face, that was good.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
well, but you and Dan are friends. You've been
I've
friends
had
for a
to put
long
up
time,
with this too. Not
and
as
so
long
you're
as
very familiar with.
Sheriff Brooks, but
No, but seriously, I really love teaching history and working with junior high age kids because it's the eyes, the twinkle in the eye, that thing. I always said that if you succeed in giving the love of learning, the learning itself will surely follow, and I really believe that. I saw it happen.
Yeah. How many years did you teach?
About half of them. Actually, I taught special ed for 28 years, and I
Okay.
had one history class. Then for the last 6, I taught United States history. History was my major in college.
And was that here in
In
Oshkosh? or-
Oshkosh.
Okay.
I taught in Appleton.
Okay.
At James Madison Junior High and Middle School. We, of course, know James Madison as the father of the Constitution.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's wonderful. I'm so glad that you're here, Bill. And as I said, Dan and I have been trying for years. I've been trying for longer than that, and you have such a wealth of knowledge, and
Plethora.
yes, well, a plethora can be a wealth. You just know all these things, and a lot of it is basic knowledge that we all know, and then there's these little bits of trivia that I find fascinating, and I've always found that fascinating about you. So I hope that you will come back again.
That's a pretty nice compliment.
is.
Huh? Yeah.
And I mean it sincerely.
I know
You don't get that at the county board
No.
meetings, do you? No.
Well, anything else that that we kind of want to talk about as far as the resolution, the declaration? You're reading it. By the way, if someone does have some kind of colonial type garb for you,
Yes.
should they just contact you at the sheriff's department?
If they call the sheriff's office, they'll get the famous phone tree. But if you press the button to talk to the sheriff, it'll come directly to my office. And like I said, if there's something out there that I can fit into, I would like to get into the spirit of it in the dressing too. The only thing I would, and I think both these gentlemen will echo this, on your way to the parade, stop by.
Yes.
What a great way to teach your children
Yep.
about what the 4th of July is really about.
That's right.
And hear the words of the people that gave up very, very much so we can have what we have today.
And it's not that lengthy of a document. I mean, it'll probably take how long do you think?
Oh, I'm
to read?
thinking 30, 35 minutes. What do you think?
Well, I've been
Have
practicing.
you? Oh, well, you know better than I do.
And I'm thinking without the signatures, probably about 8.5 to 9 minutes.
Oh, really? See, last time Towers ran the signatures.
And I plan on doing that.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I think that's a part of it.
Yeah, it is.
yeah,
It
it
is.
is.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, wow, you read. All right, I withdraw that.
So even if it's 15 minutes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what is 15 minutes out of your Sunday morning?
That's right. And it's a precursor to the parade, which is a good timing. That's why we have it at 8 o'clock.
Or if someone's going off to church rather than the parade, either way,
Yeah.
it's at a decent enough hour that you can make everything.
The other thing is we'd really like this to continue beyond 1 year. We'd like continuity with this. So we're hoping that it would continue every
With
year.
the sheriff every year then?
Ideally, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And
All
with Bill Wingren introducing, maybe we don't have to introduce it. Maybe just try to get the tradition of doing it. Like Brooks did it. Oh, I'm going to do it. Okay,
Right.
keep it. We should like to keep it going.
That would be a nice tradition.
Yeah,
That would be a
yeah.
really nice tradition for us to,
Yep.
to have here in this county. Are we like the only county in the state, do you know?
We're probably
that
the only
is-
county in the United States.
That's doing this?
Yeah.
With the sheriff?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's
Hopefully
even more of
that-
an honor.
Hopefully some people are listening, like at the Northwestern,
Yes.
and will give us some publicity.
Yeah.
And I think we already have asked Mark Harris to send out some information,
Right.
at least to the other counties in Wisconsin. That's a really good point. I don't know. I can't imagine any other county doing this.
No.
So if we started something, good for us.
Absolutely.
But,
You bet.
and Bill hits it on the head, I hope that the media picks up on this and encourages people to attend. I think it's a great tradition, and I'm sure that whoever my successor is, they'll feel the same honor to do this.
Sure. Well, as this was brought up before the county board, Bill, I mean, I can't imagine there being any opposition to this. Was there?
No.
Okay.
The only question was, did he know about this? Or are we explaining this?
Are we forcing him?
Kind of railroading him into
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah. Was there any other discussion about it? I mean, did anyone have any thoughts or?
The person that introduced it really spoke eloquently about it, and then it was passed unanimously.
Okay. All right.
You're not going to ask who introduced it?
I think I know who introduced it. The same.
Well,
man.
he would know too, but he left early. And that's another point. Dan did come to the county board meeting to speak in favor of this, and we need more people to come. I think you said this was your first meeting.
It was.
It was probably historically long a meeting, a lot of contention, but that's what America is about. And one of the grievances, by the way, in the Declaration of Independence is the king would have these little meetings at places that were inconvenient to the public. And so this Declaration of Independence speaks very well of the county board, the city council, the school board, of making our meetings accessible, inviting people, making it easy for them to have access to their government.
Unlike kind of the state when they have held very late night meetings over
And
the
their
budget.
closed caucuses.
Closed caucus,
Closed
yeah.
caucuses, yeah, yeah. Okay, very good. Well, listen, thanks to all of you for being here, really, and for doing this. Dan for,
Well, Bill really
bringing it
carried the water
forward,
on
and,
this.
and Bill for taking the ball and running with it, and both of you for helping to draft the resolution, and
And we
Sheriff
have a-
for
we have a reader.
reading
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
and hopefully the tradition will continue.
Yeah.
We do hope so.
Yeah.
All right, excellent, and happy Independence Day to all of you.
Yeah.
So-
Thank you.
Same to you.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for this segment.
Mike,
We
thanks
will
a lot
take
for
a very
doing it.
short
My
break,
pleasure.
and
I'll be there.
when we
Yeah.
come back, Sheriff Brooks will still be here, and we will continue with one of his Sheriff's Department captains. We'll be right back.
Dear Mom and Dad, well, I finally have some time off, so I'm writing to tell you that I'm doing well. We have good days and bad days over here. We try to remember the good ones and get through the bad ones. Mostly we have each other, and that's what keeps us going. And Mom, since you asked, if anyone wants to help, just tell them to contact the USO. You can't believe how much they do for us. With love, your son, Michael.
Every year, the U.S. Department of the Treasury receives about 1.4 million reports of problems with paper checks. Checks can be lost, stolen, or delayed. If you still receive Social Security payments by paper check, Treasury wants you to know about a safer, more convenient way to get your money. The Direct Express Prepaid Debit MasterCard. The Direct Express card is new and is available to anyone receiving Social Security benefits, even if you don't have a bank account. Your monthly benefits will be automatically placed onto your card account each month on the day your money is due. While other debit cards cost money, it is possible to use the Direct Express card for free to make purchases, pay bills, and get cash at thousands of locations nationwide. There are no sign-up or monthly account fees. No more waiting for the mail or worrying about lost or stolen checks. Call 1-877-212-9991 or visit www.usdirectexpress.com.
We were in an emergency situation. We don't have extra. We have a little bit of water and a little bit of food. A meeting place, no.
No.
I don't think we have a first aid kit.
We have tuna fish, we have
Right.
beans,
I don't
we
think
have canned
beans.
tomatoes,
True.
you know.
That's true, but that's really not survival food. Tomato paste.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And welcome back to the second half of Eye on Oshkosh. And as I mentioned, Sheriff Brooks is still here with us. And joining us now is Captain Mark, is it Habeck? Habeck. Okay, thank you. And welcome. This is your first time here, too. I've got a bunch of newbies here tonight. Well, you saw Bill Wingren walked out just fine and under his own power, so everything is good. What we wanted to talk about now, we can touch on a lot of different things going on within the Sheriff's Department, but the primary thing, of course, is, the jail it's getting pretty crowded.
Yes.
Getting pretty crowded over
Yes.
there.
Yep.
And this is something that we've talked about, I think, several times when you've been here, Sheriff. And,
Yes.
you're looking now at you just did a study, and we're going to talk about that study, and it's kind of coming down to a couple of different firms that the county is going to pick from, and
Right.
then move forward with some kind of a plan on
Right.
what to do about the overcrowding. So why don't you tell us kind of where we're at right now, either one of you.
Okay. Well, I'll be very brief in my comments, and I'll let Captain Habeck, who has been on the committee, the ad hoc committee, to take a look at the criminal justice study, and not just a jail study, but a criminal justice study. If we're really going to have an impact on the needs for beds and the quality of life in our community, we really need to be looking at a lot of different things. We need to be looking at the courts and their decisions in charging their decisions in asking for bonds. The court's decisions as it relates to sentencing and as it relates to what they set for bonds, probation and paroles, policies and procedures as far as when to violate somebody for probation or a parole violation, or when to simply hold them and how long they hold them. Also the law enforcement, the police agencies, their policies and procedures, and the aggressiveness in which they enforce laws where people are going to be locked up. State legislature, the laws that they pass that create mandatory incarceration for periods of time. I'm very fond of saying that as the sheriff, I'm very much like a hotel keeper, except I don't have a no vacancy sign. And as the result of that, if we're really going to do something about long-term needs, we need to recognize how all these components work together. But more importantly, there are some philosophical decisions that we need to make, and there are also some economic decisions that we need to make. And that's really what I'd like Captain Hobbick to talk about. This is the second jail study process that he's gone through. He also was one of the co-authors of the RFP for the regional jail study. In this case, he had the opportunity to cut his teeth on a very expansive study. So, Mark, would you like to talk a little bit about what the committee's been doing and who's on the committee?
Sure. The committee is made up of myself and Lieutenant Greg Cianciolo, also from the Sheriff's Office, as well as 4 members of the County Board, Chairman Albrecht and Harvey Rengsdorf, Chuck Ferry, and Chuck Fari, and also Supervisor Eisen.
Are those members of the Judiciary Committee, or are they just members of the County Board at large?
Supervisor Rengsdorf is a member of Judiciary,
Okay.
as is Supervisor Eisen was just put on that committee as well.
Okay.
And then the Supervisor Fari is a member of the Facilities Management Committee.
Okay. All right.
So, yeah.
So they all kind of, their individual committees sort of dovetail with this.
Correct.
So, okay. All right.
And one of the things that we want to do with this study is we're asking the consultant to review our current population, who's in the jail right now, and try to help us look at who's going to be in our jail in the future, and taking into consideration what are alternatives that we're currently doing. Can we make those alternatives more effective? And once we know or have an idea of the range of our population in the future, that's really then when they can look at other long-term solutions that may include anything from new programs that we haven't implemented, streamlining existing programs. We've asked them to, back in 2000, I believe it was 2006, before we started the regional study, we were asked by the County Board to look at if there is a way we could utilize the Work Release Center. When the existing jail was built, it was built with the idea that instead of having to build a new jail when there was a need for additional bed space, we could just add on housing units as that need arose. And we're asking the consultant to be able to provide us with some information as far as what's our bed space going to be in the future, what are appropriate and effective alternatives that we can implement to try to control that and ultimately reduce recidivism. But then for those people that the community needs to have kept separate, what are economical and safe ways that we can go about meeting that objective?
Sure. Now, you talk about who's going to be in the jail in the future. That's really, I mean, these consultants, they really have to know their stuff. Because, yeah, you can kind of look at, you know, all of your data over the course of however many years, but society changes. And sometimes it changes really fast. And you can't always predict who's going to be in your jail in the future, because just when you think you've got it down almost to a science, something else happens, and before you know it, you've got new situations on your hands. So how do you kind of prepare for that sort of a contingency, or how do they suggest you prepare for that?
I think one of the ways is, in fact, today we had presentations by both finalists, and one of the issues that they both brought up was that neither one feels that they can tell you what your population number is going to be in 5, 10, or 20 years, but they can give you a range of, if this happens, here's a range that you could expect. And by giving us information as far as if judicial philosophy changes, or if the philosophy of the district attorney and who they're going to charge, or if we change internal processes as law enforcement as far as who we book and release versus require to post bond.
Or if state law changes.
Right, or if the laws change. And to give us a blueprint so that we know going into it some of the different options, not only the options that as far as, let's say we take an alternative program, we could use that program, but knowing ahead of time, if things change, we're going to have to adapt and either revise that program or look for additional programs to offset the changes. It's really kind of the same as when we had the Work Release Center open. I don't know that we would have predicted in 2005 we'd be closing it, and we had to adapt to that, and we expanded our electronic monitoring program to do that. And this is just another way for us to look at trying to future-proof some things and set ourselves up for success in the future.
Sure. Let's talk about the two finalists. One is Kimmy and Associates, or Kimmy,
Yes.
I'm trying to think here what their
Yeah.
official
And
name
Kimmy-
is.
Kimmy and
Kimmy and Associates, and the other is the Institute for Law and Policy Planning. Now, Kimmy and Associates, that name rings a very familiar bell with me. They were involved in the studies and so forth on this jail. Am I correct in that? Or
Well,
they had something to do with it, didn't
yes,
they?
they did, in two parts. The first part, the city and the county hired a consulting firm to come in and study space needs at the safety building. And if you recall, at that time, we had our jail on the second floor. The sheriff's office was in there, the district attorney's office.
Wow, what a change, huh?
Yeah, and Kimmy was hired as by that consulting firm to come in and talk about, or to look at the jail portion of that study. That group, that consultant came back and said, here's some things you can do, but the priority right now needs to be the correctional facility. At the time that we started going out for bids, once we had everything approved and we went out for bids, it ended up with Oscar Bolt as the construction manager, Venture Architects, and Dennis Kimmy. And what Mr. Kimmy's job at that point, or what his firm's job was at that point, was they met with a core group of members of our sheriff's office to talk about to plan how the facility would work. Not so much to design it as to how you'll make it work. Right down to the very first question that was asked of the core group is, okay, I'm Officer A, and I've now just arrested an individual, and I'm bringing them here to 4311 Jackson Street. Where do I go? Well, you come to the jail. Well, okay, but how do I get into the jail? How do I let people know? When I get into the jail, what's the process? Are you going to book them in a booking area? Do you want a pre-booking area? What's the flow going to be? That was Dennis Kimmy's part of it. At that point. I have not had any experience with the other firm, although, and I haven't been involved in the committee, so I'm not familiar with what their background is as far as other places they worked, other than I know that they did work at Dane County.
Okay, all right. So, but they're both, would you say this is, jails and these types of facilities, these are specialty areas for them, or is it just something that they do along with everything else and it's not necessarily a niche market for them?
I would say it's a specialty, but I wouldn't limit it to jails. Their specialty really is the criminal justice system as a whole.
Okay.
And while the end result from the sheriff's office deals with bed space and how we deal with the inmate population, the consultants have to look at a system-wide approach.
Okay. So the status of this right now, the jail study has been, this was the headline in the newspaper the other day, jail study narrowed down to 2 firms. So what's the next step? These 2 firms what do? They present something to you guys as a whole? Do they present it to the county board as a whole? Explain to us how that process works.
Today we had a committee meeting, and each one of the firms came in and gave a presentation to the committee. Okay. And the next week, Tuesday, the committee's meeting, and we'll hopefully be deciding at that time who we feel the finalists should be to be recommended to the full county board. And at that time, it'll be ultimately the board's decision which consultant they would like to go with.
So this could, we're taping this on June 17th. If you're going to meet with them next week, that'll still be before July. Conceivably, and the county board meets what, the 3rd?
27th
Is it the
of
third
July.
Thursday of the month?
Yeah.
So conceivably, this could possibly come before the county board at its next meeting?
Correct.
Okay. Well, things are moving along then.
Yes, they are.
And so let's talk about what this study really, what does the study show? What kinds of things were looked at in this study?
Well, let me just talk briefly what we hope to get out of the study. And what we hope to get out of the study is recommendations for best business type practices as it would relate, and that's probably the poor term, but from a business standpoint, the best business practices that may be able to be incorporated into the district attorney's office and into the court system to how do I want to say this? I don't want to say to move it along, but so that there aren't delays in the processes. And that's important because for example, if somebody can't make their bond, if there's a delay in the process, that's just that many more days that they're sitting in the jail. That is what drives up the daily jail population average, and that's what drives up the need for beds. So you want to hold people for an appropriate length of time, but you want to make sure that the system keeps moving along. Now, I will tell you that Winnebago County, I hear time in and time out that our judicial system moves much faster than what a lot of other counties do, but it's like anything else. They'll find things in the DA's office and in the courts and in the alternatives to incarceration that we're using that hopefully will make us more effective. That's what we're looking for as the first part of it. The second part of it is to make some recommendations, in the area of alternatives and how to make them more effective. And maybe there's some things out there that we're not doing. Currently, and I'll let Mark talk a little bit about what we're doing, but to me the importance of this portion of it is for us to go beyond just warehousing somebody with a bracelet. We're not really doing anything for that individual as far as reducing recidivism, simply by saying instead of being in C block, you're going to be at home. We're not dealing with some of the root causes of their problems. If I could digress for a second, we all are familiar with the term community policing. And what community policing is not only going out and enforcing the laws, but getting at the root problems, what's causing the problems. This is the same concept that we need to bring to corrections and to the individuals that get caught up in the system. So if we're going to, if we move in that direction, that's another way we reduce the need for beds down the line. We reduce the recidivism, we have a lower number of people violating the law again. We reduce the number of beds. That also has a side effect of quality of life issue for the community. Less crime, better quality of life issue. And then last but not least, to take a look at that component of corrections, the jail, the hardened cells, or the dorm pods or whatever it may be, and making recommendations as to how we would go about meeting what our future needs will be. But the one that, and obviously I realize this is 3 parts, but the one that I would really like Mark to talk about just for a minute, if he could, is the things that we are doing at our facility right now to try and not only hold down bed space, but also to work on recidivism.
Okay. All right, you're on.
All right. One of the things that we're doing through the courts is we've got the drug court program, and that's been very successful so far. And one of the other ideas that's being looked at is the possibility of a mental health court as well. And We also have the day report center that we've contracted with Family Services for. And we're also doing programming in the jail for the inmates that don't qualify for work release and can't go to day report and get those services. We want to, while they're a captive audience, deliver services to them that will hopefully help them to make better choices once they are released back in the community. Because as the sheriff said, not only is that a quality of life issue for the community as a whole, but for that individual person, if they can be making better choices, it impacts their life, their family life, etc. I think another one of the things that we look at that's important to think about when we talk about bed space in need is that in the old jail, you had a set number of beds, and if we could put a body in every bed, that's kind of how you look at if the jail's full or not. But we have to use what's called objective classification, and what that is, it assigns, in essence, a security level to the inmate, and it takes into account their current charges, the severity of the offense, past institutional behavior problem, escape attempts, things of that nature, and they get assigned whether they're a maximum inmate, medium inmate, or minimum inmate. And so it's not just that we have a 355 bed jail and we can put 355 people in it, but we need to have, we may have more female inmates than what we have female space for instance. At which point, regardless of what the population is, we're overcrowded for that demographic. Also, we may have more minimum inmates that we have to house in a higher security setting, which we can adapt and do that, but in essence, we're paying a more expensive price for those medium or maximum beds than if we had more minimum space. And the opposite's true if we have more maximum inmates than what we have cells for. In addition, we separate by special needs, mental health considerations, people that are on suicide watch, inmates that have acute medical issues. And at any given time, we may have more inmates in a certain demographic, not just gender, but these classifications, than what we necessarily have the beds for. And that's why it's important that when we talk about bed space, we're not using that 355 number as our operating capacity. We're really probably talking anywhere from, depending on the percentages you want to use, anywhere from 300 to 325 as an operating capacity, because we need the ability to take that inmate who's been in a maximum setting but's followed our rules, maybe is attending programs and showing that they're willing to comply and maybe want to make a change. And we need the ability to put that person in a lower security setting. Likewise, if we have people in a low security setting and they choose to not follow rules and give other inmates and staff problems on their housing area, we need the ability to move them to a more restrictive housing area. And we need that for both genders and all classifications. And then you mix into that mental health issues, medical issues. We do need a functional operating empty capacity to be able to accommodate our daily needs.
So you keep a certain number or a certain percentage of beds available so that you can flex that muscle a little bit, if
right.
you will.
And then there's times too where events within the community, where whether it's summertime, whether there's special events coming up that put a higher demand on our beds, and we need to have that extra, not extra, but the empty capacity to be able to absorb those times where over a weekend or a holiday weekend, the courts aren't setting bond and people aren't posting and getting out. We need to be able to absorb that instead of having to potentially ship inmates out of county.
Yeah, and so I was going to ask you, if you do have that situation arise, and I don't know how often it really happens, but when a situation such as you've just described does come up, where do you send them typically? Is it Outagamie or Fond du Lac County, or might it be even further away?
Well, currently, that situation does come up. Let me take a step back. Not only are we concerned about being able to use the classification appropriately and move people around, excuse me, we also have to recognize there's a liability issue too if you're not housing appropriate inmates with other appropriate inmates, and somebody should be hurt. That does create a liability for the citizens of Winnebago County. But it happens a lot more than what you think, because as the captain said, we believe at 325 we are already overcrowded, because it really inhibits our ability to house according to their classification. So at that point, that's the definition of anybody that's involved in corrections. That is the definition of overcrowded. So it happens a lot more than what you would think. Obviously, some of the pods are broken up into smaller units of varying sizes, so that gives us a little bit more flexibility too. But unfortunately, we hit that over 325 on a much more frequent basis than one would believe. We have yet, as of this date, not housed outside of county. And the sad thing about it, and Mark probably is more aware right now of how far we would have to travel, but I can tell you that Waupaca is probably the only adjacent county that has bed space that might be available. Outagamie, Calumet, we house for Calumet on occasion. Waushara, Green Lake is building a new facility, but there really is no close place, because there is. Watoma's a 45-minute drive one way, along with the amount of time the officer would have to stay there, and that doesn't include having to bring the person back and forth to court. So housing out is not a good way to do things. I know a lot of people in the community. I know this original jail was very contentious, and
It was. Yeah.
and I can understand that. The last place I want to see my tax dollars are going into a jail. I'd rather see them going into parks and boat landings and other things that we can all enjoy. But we also have to recognize the need to protect ourselves from individuals. And this goes back, and Mark and I have had this conversation many different times. It's about the philosophy of how we use our resources. And maybe some of the inmates that we are incarcerating, maybe there's a better way to deal with them than incarceration. And that goes a little bit towards the electronic monitoring. But maybe there's some more ways that we can do that so that we're not increasing that need frequently. The reality of it is, and as a taxpayer, I'm not any happier about it than anybody else. The reality of it is that we will have to add some beds on to meet our future needs. But if we're really going to be doing our job for the community, we need to be addressing these philosophical questions, and we need to be addressing processes, and then we need to be addressing how we're going to meet the needs for all those issues, not just for the jail beds, but there may be some expenses involved in the court system, or some expense involved in the district attorney's office, in order to have these processes flow as effectively as possible. Okay.
You mentioned about when someone is in another county, bringing them back and forth for court appearances. I know we have, video conferencing or whatever it's called here in the county. So it's not kind of I don't want to say a regional thing, but it's not set up interdepartmentally then, that someone, if they're being housed in Waushara County, for example, could video conference their court appearance here in Winnebago County. Okay.
No, not at this point. And I hate to, I'm a little remiss in not knowing our adjoining counties that have video conferencing, but really right now it is being done only on the state level back to the county, and it can only be done for status type hearings. It can't be done for any adversarial type hearing, so it's very limited as to what it can be done or can be used. But let me just, and I love to always talk about this because people don't realize how much time goes into a 15-minute status hearing if we have to pick up that prisoner. Let's say that prisoner is at Waupun, closest facility, one of the closest facilities. Obviously we have a couple here in Winnebago County, but let's say we have to go pick up somebody in Waupun. It's going to take 2 officers. It's 45 minutes to drive down there. But now, once again, if court is at 9 o'clock in the morning, we also recognize that we may get down there in 45 minutes, but we may not be able to get that prisoner out. It may take a half hour to get that prisoner out. Oftentimes takes longer. Then we have a 45-minute drive back, so we have to be here in time for that 9 o'clock court. So we're looking at starting people sometime around 7 o'clock in the morning. By contract, that's overtime. Now they get here at 9 o'clock, The status hearing is over at 9:15.
If you're lucky.
If we're lucky.
I've seen inmates
Yeah.
sit there for a very long time.
Well, and I will tell you, the judges, right down to the last one, really do a good job when we're bringing people from state institutions and making sure we
Okay.
get them in and out of there right away. But even at that, so now we've started the officers, 2 officers at 7 o'clock. The status hearing's over. They're probably back in the car somewhere around 9:30, 20 to 10. And now they're driving back down there, and guess what? We have to wait sometimes to get them back in too.
Yeah.
You know, so let's say they're there at you know, back there at 10:30. Let's say it takes a half hour to get them back in. Now it's another 45-minute drive, and we're now at almost noon. We have almost 5 hours of time, and times 2, of which 2 hours were overtime. It's a very long process. So when we started thinking about doing these transports, they are a very, very expensive way of doing business. And I do hope, as you talk, and to me, I see no reason why this can't eventually get there, other than right now, tax dollars are just extremely tight. But I hope it's someday that if we have a prisoner that gets arrested in La Crosse County and he has to have a bond hearing, that he could do it via video conference. That's a 3-hour drive one way. It would benefit all of us to be able to do that. And the technology's there. It's just a matter of getting people on board.
Sure. So obviously we need, and we're running out of time here, so I want to make sure we hit on this point. You know, 300 and some beds right now, and that's getting filled up, and is in some cases filled up already. As we progress through this process then, how many beds ideally are you folks looking to, if you had your druthers, add on?
I'll let you go ahead.
That's really a question that is dependent. The answer is dependent on what the consultants find as far as the data, right? Because again, it goes to what is our future population projections, and what can we do to lower that number using different alternatives and refining the alternatives we currently have. And then once we have that number, that really tells us, gives us that range to look at. So at this point, I think it would be premature to throw a number out there.
How much could be added on? I mean, you've got a lot of empty space out there.
Well, let me go back just to answer one more part of that question. The consultants are going to come in and they're going to make recommendations, and as Mark had alluded to in other conversations, based on the options that they give us, they will probably say, you know, if you follow all these options and nothing else happens, this is a ballpark or range. But you know, a lot of that depends on you know, what options they give us and what the final decisions are as far as adhering to those options. And then I'll let you answer the second part.
As far as capacity, when the jail was built and opened in 2003, there's certain areas that we call core areas, things like the kitchen, the laundry area, property room, and those areas we could go up to 800 beds without having to expand those core areas.
Okay.
And that was part of the mission that the county board gave the people involved in the planning was. They wanted a facility that would last up to 50 years without having to replace the facility. And so both the Kimming Associates and Venture Architects and Oscar Bolt all said the same thing. The best way to do that is to overbuild those core areas such as property and kitchen. Normally you would overbuild visitation, but we do visitation a little differently so that we didn't have to overbuild, which also saved us manpower. So things like that.
Okay, excellent. Thanks so much to both of you for being here.
Thank you.
We're going to have you back one time as you get ready to leave.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Maybe even more than that. Who knows? Anyway,
I'm always here.
Thanks again to both of
Thank you.
That's going to do it for us. We'll see you next time. Until then, take care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.